Hello and welcome to the True North Show, a show where we dive into the pivotal moments that ignite our guests' passions, uncover the stories behind their purpose, and reveal the real-life strategies they use to stay balanced and prioritize mental well-being. Get ready for inspiring conversations that light the way to living with intention, resilience, while following your true north. I'm your host, Megan North, and I would like to thank our sponsors of the show, Quantum Awakening, Beth Lewis, and Anne C. Clark. Now today, I am joined by Jeremy Birt, an experienced executive coach, business mentor, and leadership strategist who brings over 2 decades of senior leadership experience to his coaching practice. As the founder of The Strategy Factory, Jeremy works with ambitious executives and boards to unlock leadership potential, sharpen strategic focus, and accelerate career and business outcomes. He's held CEO and COO roles across sectors including agribusiness, retail, digital, media, and utilities, leading complex transformations, scaling businesses, and building high-performing teams. That hands-on executive experience combined with a deep coaching capability gives Jeremy a rare edge. He understands what it's like to sit in the big chair and how to navigate the pressure, complexity, and opportunity that comes with it. Jeremy holds an MBA from the Australian Graduate School of Management and is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. He also holds a Level 2 postgraduate certificate in applied coaching, credentialed at ICF's PCC levels. For those in Australia, you'll probably understand that. For those in America, you may not. His coaching is grounded in practical insight, commercial acumen, and a genuine commitment to helping leaders grow. Whether guiding CEOs through career inflection points or mentoring emerging leaders with untapped potential, Jeremy is known for his strategic clarity, grounded approach, and ability to bring out the best in those he works with. Welcome to the show, Jeremy. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to be here. Lots of letters in that. Sorry, lots of acronyms in that bio.
But I think it's really interesting to go through that, because I think your experience really does define you as an expert in the work that you're doing. So, I think it's funny, isn't it, in that corporate space as well, is that people do like to see letters and they do like to see qualifications.
Yeah. Look, I think, I think that's true, but I think the magic really lies in a mix of both.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's dive in. So we are the True North Show. So what I would love to understand is, what was the defining moment that led you to pursue your true passion and purpose?
For me, it was really having achieved what I wanted to achieve in a corporate setting. So I'd sort of set this lofty goal of becoming a CEO, and decided, that's what I wanted to do. And in some ways, I sort of reflect on that and think maybe that was a little bit of a lazy goal, because you think, I'll set CEO and I'll never get there, and then you just sort of run along. But then I did get there, and then I actually then thought, look, what's next? Do you want to just keep doing it? Or do something else. And so then it provided me a bit of gap, a bit of latitude, a bit of clear air to really sort of take a deliberate review of what I wanted to do. And I basically, it took a while to get to, I have to say. And then I looked at all the good bits that I'd enjoyed doing over my corporate career, and then thought, well, is there a way that I can meld all those bits together and create something that I'm really passionate about for the next, the next phase for me, and the next chapter for me. So, that was a big inflection point. But the good thing is I had some time.
And so the Strategy Factory, this is a new endeavor for you, isn't it? Like, this is like a new venture for you.
Yeah, so I've done consulting on and off through my career, and I've worked in private equity firms. Where I've typically been, the operations guy, sort of parachuted in, hit the ground running, put a team together quickly, and work out what the strategy is either for the whole business or more typically for the operational side of the business, and say, like, how are we going to achieve the goals and what's the strategy to do that? So I've always enjoyed the strategic part of it. Certainly my studies at the MBA were focused on strategy. But the new part for me now is really bolting on that additional study and additional specialization of executive coaching, mentoring. So I've mentored people through my career, which has been great, but there's a clear distinction, certainly in my mind, and if you talk to the ICF in their minds too, around, the difference between coaching and mentoring. And I think I've found it good to have some structure in the conversations and in the direction of the conversation. But also have some business experience to be able to say, look, this is what, if my time over again, this is what I wouldn't do. But as long as you're clear. So for me, that's kind of an important thing. So to answer your question, I started the Strategy Factory in September last year. I've been growing the footprint basically of doing that. I've been doing some podcasting, and talking to some fascinating people, and then picking up some really interesting conversations and coaching opportunities, mainly at this point with individuals. So it's been great. I've really enjoyed it so far. Great, but a very fulfilling journey for me so far.
And did you, when like September last year, were you at a real fork in the road of, do I continue on down that real corporate space, or do I make a decision? Was it a courageous decision to actually go a different direction and do what you wanted to do?
Look, I'd love to say it was a really brave decision and I had all this sort of fortitude to do it. I think in hindsight, I probably underestimated the complexity of doing it. I don't know why, but and that's probably a good thing. So that sort of naivety kind of helps you to sort of jump in and say, look, let's see what happens here.
Yeah.
I found, to be frank, the jump from COO to CEO, I didn't find that easy, to land that CEO role.
Yeah.
And then, I can see, not that I've tried very hard, but I can see others who've come out of CEO roles and are trying to get into the next CEO role. It's not that easy. You've got to be in the right place at the right time. There has to be an opportunity. Generally, you need the right level of experience, and it's very competitive. So there's a number of things. It's not that easy to get the next CEO role. Plenty of people do it, and hats off to them. But I really sort of struggled with being sort of super passionate about that at that time. And again, I'm very kind of people centric, and so I think if I had my time over again, I'd either be a psychologist. Or a lawyer, I think. So, but I started my career in sales, and I think that probably on reflection says a bit about as well. Getting to know people, getting to know your client, really understanding it. I was very into a consultative selling approach. And so to me, actually starting the Strategy Factory is kind of not surprising then if you look at it in that context.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, when you get to those roles of COO, so for those who don't know, we are talking very corporate here, but Chief Operating Officer, and then a CEO is obviously a Chief Executive Officer. But when you get into those really big roles, I also think too that you almost lose touch with the people, because you're not really, it can be quite lonely in those big roles because you're kind of at the top of the tree and you're more strategic, you're more how's the business going, whereas if you are a people person, it's interesting that you said if you had your time over, you might have been a psychologist. I think that true people connection comes back to you, because I suspect you're probably really missing that one-on-one interaction with people, and actually just how are you going and what's going on, and how can I help you one-on-one?
For sure. And so I really, I used to have meetings with my skip level meetings, so my direct reports, just to try and stay a little bit closer, to the front line, if I can put it that way. And, really enjoyed spending time with the guys, at the front line, either in packing and distribution or actually in sales and marketing and what have you. So it's difficult though, that CEO role, it does pull you because you can't spend all of your time there because there's other things that you need to do, to keep the board happy, etc., and do all of that. Manage what you're supposed to be doing as well. So you're right. It it can be a little bit a singular endeavor. Like being a CEO.
Yeah.
So yeah, and even COO, I think my advice would be not to lose contact with the people, because you can't do it all yourself. You need people to follow you, and to do that, you need to be authentic, and people need to trust you, and they need to know you.
Yeah.
That's the thing, or feel like they know you at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that you're a human and that you, yeah.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you. Sorry, I'll tell you like an interesting story. I heard a bit of a bit of off piece, but I heard about like there was an article that I listened to, and they were saying why Taylor Swift was so popular, and why her fans were so sort of rusted on and so loyal, and it's because they thought it was because she gave everybody that followed her the impression that she was talking directly to them. And so they felt that ownership and that human connection. So I mean, I'm not taking away about her talent, in singing and entertainment, but on top of that, she's overlaid that, that sort of magic where people feel they belong, as a Swiftie and what have you. So I think it transcends lots of different types of scenarios.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so you mentioned just before that you stepped into this endeavor of the what you're doing now, and maybe a bit blindly, and you've had some challenges. So can you share maybe a couple of challenges that you've faced through that process, and how you overcame it to just make sure that you're aligned with where you're going?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the good thing about doing your own thing is you can do anything, within reason. And so for the first period, be it few days, few weeks, you're like, yeah, I can do anything I want, and then you sort of slow down and the sort of euphoria dies a little bit. It's okay. So what are you going to do? And you think, okay. Yeah. And then so you talk to people, that you trust, and your trusted advisors, etc., and start to put that together. But I mean, certainly like the conversations that we've had, and around, if you kind of go, okay, well, where is your true north? What is it that you want to do? What's what are you trying to achieve? And I think working out the strategy to get there is kind of more formulaic, potentially more easier to do. But actually, you're being deliberate about what it is you want to do. I think that can be quite tough, because I think, if you want to be successful and make progress in anything that you're doing, if you keep changing direction all the time, I think then that just slows you up. It's just going to take you longer to get there, practically. And it can be frustrating personally, I think. So I think that can be difficult for people. I think I was aware of that. I just spent a long time, like, even, you sort of think, what are you going to call a business? I can call it anything, and then you go, but what is it? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? And then it's got to resonate with that. And then what's available? And then, so, I mean, we'll probably talk about it later, but from a well-being perspective, I think you need to manage that really closely, because I actually registered the business name on Christmas Eve. I'm sitting there watching TV, and it's available, great, and I actually got it. Why are you doing this Christmas Eve? What, like, you should be not doing that Christmas. That's exactly the day you shouldn't be doing that. So again, I think, lessons for me is you've got to watch that bit,
Absolutely, absolutely. And I also think too that I think that there's got to be some level of flexibility in what you think you're going to do as well, because we do have some people, I believe, go, this is what I'm going to do, this is what the business is going to be, and they're just so dogged at it and they go for it. But then I think sometimes, when you start to talk to people and you're like, okay, this is what I've got in my head and this is what I'm going to offer, I think talking to people and being a little bit flexible, I think, is important, because what you think people need may not be what they're telling you they need. And so I think, from a coaching perspective particularly, I think there needs to be that time that you can go, okay, I thought I was going to go in this direction, but actually I might need to just pivot a little bit to be able to meet where my clients are at.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure whether was it Bill Gates, someone more intelligent than me, said there was a quote around people overestimating what they can do in the long term, but underestimating what they can do in the short term. I think
Oh, okay.
overestimating what they can do in the short term and underestimating what they can do in the long
In the
term.
long term,
And I
right.
thought that's kind of quite interesting, really, because
Mm.
if you're trying to set your North Star, are you applying this bias, or this heuristic that you have, and you
Yep.
go, well, just set it a little bit lower than it could be.
Mm.
Yeah, and then you kind of march along, and of course you achieve all of your goals, but you're kind of not achieving what you could have done if you'd have thought about it a little bit more,
Yeah.
in more depth, maybe put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I also think too that when you're following your true north, I think it's really important to have that right inner circle around you as well.
Yeah.
Because I talk about sometimes that when people are just out there saying, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do these 50 things, and then people are going, well, how are you going with it? Then you start to feel, if you haven't achieved it, I'm always saying, just keep your inner circle quiet and just talk to the people that you really trust their input, and also their challenges as well. I had a lady that I do some coaching work with at the beginning of last year. And I was, for the first couple of years in my business, known as, like, I was the overwhelm coach. So I was helping women who were overwhelmed to help them overcome the overwhelm. And when I told her that, and I said to her, it's not gelling. It's just not gelling. And she said, Megan, you're trying to sell overwhelm to women who are overwhelmed, and they don't want to buy overwhelm because they're overwhelmed.
I already got that bit.
But I just had this, because I thought it was genius. It was exactly what I thought I was. I was like, oh my goodness, you're
Yeah.
right. I
Yeah.
was overwhelming them.
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah.
I really I thought, oh my goodness, sharing that with her and getting that true, honest feedback was very instrumental, because then I actually changed everything. Then went into the whole, well, actually, I'm following my purpose. My surname is North. How can I use that more? And everything shifted in my business after that.
Yeah. I think that, what you've done there also, but you've backed yourself. And I have found that, whilst you go and canvass people's opinion, you can tell the same story or express the same dilemma, articulate the same dilemma, and you get different answers from people that you kind of love and trust, but they're not always right, and well intentioned, but not always on the money. I had an experience where I was talking to somebody about the podcast that I'd started up. And then I said, I've built this website and I've done the podcast and I've got this and I've got that and I've done all that, and all this sort of stuff that I'd never really done before. And this person who I've known for years, 20 odd years, he said, goodness, you're really operating outside your comfort zone here, and I thought, okay, it's a bit limiting in a way. So it didn't mean it that way, but I just thought, oh yeah, maybe I'm taking a risk here, Anyway, so, and I just happened to tell the same, have a similar conversation with somebody else who was a coach, not in a coaching context, but I was just chatting to her, really smart lady. And she said, oh, it's so great. You're spending so much time expanding your comfort zone. And I just thought, that's like, I love that, and I'm just going to do more of that, So I think that that's really, for me, that was an interesting story, right? Because, there's two people that I really rate have viewed it the other way. And so, what does that mean? That means, the first conversation was on a Thursday, second one was on the Friday. So Saturday, I'm sitting there with a cup of tea and go, am I really out of my comfort zone here? Or am I working to improve myself? What's the answer? And then, so I had to make a decision. And the answer was, I'm expanding my comfort zone. That was my decision at the time. And I've not regretted that. So it's been good. But sometimes the advice can, not always be 100% aligned,
Yeah, yeah. But, I also think, though, that those moments are golden nuggets for you, because you then view the conversations that you have with those two people differently, because the person that thought that you were, really limiting and had the opposite thought that you did, you kind of go, okay, well, maybe when I'm talking to them, I might get different advice, or I'll just not downplay, but just kind of say, oh yeah, I'm plugging along and I'm doing things. Whereas the other person that's really expansive, you'll probably say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What are your thoughts? Like, I just think it's really interesting that we then get these different views of people. That I do sometimes change my conversations with people depending on, I know how their response is going to be, because I don't want the limited response. I want the expanded response.
Yeah, exactly. And things like, I think things like names, and you'll probably have found this, can be quite polarizing. So, I've spoken to people about the Strategy Factory name. And some people are like, it's not really a factory, is it? What's mechanical about it? And you're kind of go, look, it's not supposed to be a factory. It's like it's a metaphor, right? And then I met somebody 2 days ago, and I gave him my card, and he took the card like that, and he was like a career consultant, right? And somebody that I look at and go, wow, he's like had 20 or 30 years of top level, top notch consultancy experience. And I just thought, that's a real, like, he's a real, big timer from a consulting perspective. And he had my card, and he was just tapping like that. And he goes, what a great name. I love that. So you gotta go, oh, you can't pick it, And I said, well, it's too late now because I've spent the money on the card. So I'm not changing it. It's on my website. I'm not changing it. But, I think you do need to back yourself and just go, I'm going to go with it. Not everybody's going to like it, right?
Yeah.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah. And I think that's why that inner circle is really important, because you then aren't telling 100,000 people all of your ideas and getting 100,000 different responses. If your inner circle is small when you talk to them, if you've only got I've only got really a couple of people that I talk to about things that I've got planned, because I really value their feedback. But also, then if something doesn't work, I've got an authentic relationship where I can say to them, that bombed, or, oh, I'm not feeling it now. And I don't feel like,
tell me before.
I don't feel like I'm having to tell 100,000 people the same thing of why something didn't work,
For sure. Exactly.
Yeah. It's an interesting process, isn't it?
Mm.
And so, do you so we're talking like September last year, so you've been operating for 9 months. Do you think even through that short period that your path has evolved, like even in 9 months? Like, do you think things have evolved, you've evolved in this process?
Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah.
Very much so. I think I've gone from, I've always been strategically orientated, but those operational type roles that I've done in the past do drag you into the transactional, which is fine and it's necessary. And but now it's really enabled me to sort of focus on personal development as well as developing others, but really sort of digging into the it's not psychology, but into that, positive psychology, which I'm, a keen follower of. So, so I've grown. I mean, I've studied. So I started the course with the Australian Australian College of Applied Professions, and did a grad cert, as you heard, or as you announced before, in applied coaching. But that's really not only built confidence, but built capability to be able to talk to people in a more structured way, and really get the best out of their conversations for them, which is something that I needed to work on. And some people go just, out of corporate straight into coaching, and they do that. I felt I wanted to spend a bit more time developing myself before doing that, which was good. So I did the accelerated course, but I feel I've grown from that, and my outlook has very much grown, so I meet people now. I'm not selling. I don't sell people coaching. If they want a conversation, then I think I'm going to add value. And if I don't think we're going to add value, then then we have a candid conversation around that. Look, I'm happy to help, but is this what you're really looking for? So, and I mean, I'm sure you'd have had many conversations like that as well. So sometimes you've got the right service, but it's kind of at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So, so for me, the Strategy Factory is very much about building relationships. It's about improving myself, but improving those that I work with. But I'm playing the long game. It's, I'm not pushing anybody into, and there's a 50% discount today if you sign up, and, give me your email address. It's like, it doesn't, it fits many brands, but that's not what the Strategy Factory is about.
Yeah. And Yeah, I think that whole, particularly from the coaching point of view, that whole know, like, and trust, I think is really important. I don't think I've ever had anyone come to me that I've never ever known and just say, I need to work with you. I've usually met them, they've been referred to me, or they've watched me, they've said, oh, I've been following you and I'd really love to work with you.
Yeah,
That know, like, and trust, I think, is really important.
yeah.
And I
I
think,
think that's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And so, from you, from a personal point of view, like you said, from a professional development point of view, is there one thing that you think, like reflecting on even just the last 9 months, that you think, wow, I've really grown in that space?
Well, it's given me the chance actually to do a lot of volunteer work, pro bono work. So I've been doing youth mentoring with the Raise Foundation here in Australia. I've done mentoring of university students who are just in their final year of uni trying to get into the workforce, and so they're starting to position in that, and they're interested in that corporate side of things.
Mm.
And I've done some mentoring, again with the uni, but in a schools context. So, mentoring kids who are finishing their schooling, HSC, and then looking, trying to figure out what they need from a university. Are they going to go into medicine? Are they going to go into business? I sit under the business faculty flag. But again, that's been interesting. And I just never would have had the time to do that. But even then, I find there's real applicability to what I'm learning there, that you just, without having those conversations, you'd never learn it, So imagine this: I'm sitting, I sit at the scene. I'm in a hall with a few other mentors, sitting under a flag with UNSW faculty, business faculty, and so 18 schools come in, and the kids will sit down. It's over a 9-week period, and the 2 schools will come in, and their kids will sit down, and they'll chat to you, and they'll ask you, they can talk to whoever they want to.
Yeah.
So they tend to come in groups. So in groups of 2 or 3 will come in, then I'll sit down, and so the top question I got was, and I wasn't that surprised about the top question. The top question was, if I go into business, how much money will I make? And you think, okay, well, all right, fair enough. Here the answer to that is, like, here's a salary survey. Depends what you want to do. Have a read. Over to you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the second most popular question, or most common question that I got over the 9 weeks was, if I go into business, what will my work-life balance be?
Mm.
And these are 16-year-olds, right? And I just sat there and I just thought, what, at 16, if somebody had said, hey, JB, what's your view on work-life balance? I'd have just sat there and gone, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
So, but what does that mean for us all as we go forward? It means that the generations, who are coming up through the workforce and in society in general are starting to prioritize well-being. They're starting to prioritize mental health over lots of other things, which I speak for myself, I didn't do when I was that age, right? And so, and I think, in business, there's a lot of applicability, and you got to take notice of that. So, if you're going to be a CEO that's going to sit there and go, right, all you guys, you're coming back to the office, and you're going to work. And if I call you, you pick up the phone within 3 rings. And he's going to go, well, I'm not sure if you're really going to get a lot of traction with the guys that I'm talking to, right? Because they're not going to want that job, right? Yeah. So that, but then even, I think, broader than just the corporate, I know in the corporate's only, a small part of life. But people are starting to prioritize themselves, and I think rightly so, which is good. And so, back to your question, I've learned a lot from the opportunities that I've had, not to be kind of just on that sort of corporate merry-go-round, and actually take some time and spend some time with people that I wouldn't normally do, so that's been really fascinating, and a lot of learning there. Yeah, it's been really interesting.
I love that. And that's the beauty, isn't it, of owning your own business. You can manage your own diary, your own time. You can choose who you want to work with. You can choose who you don't want to work with. It's all of that in corporate, you've got no choice, really. It's kind of like, oh, this is the guy that I'm, sitting next to, and I've got to work with him.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think my problem, back to well-being, I think my problem has been, if I reflect on the last few months, it's like I just say yes to everything, right? So I look at the diary and go, you're going to have to start saying no to some stuff.
Yeah.
And prioritize, so
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about that after we hear from our sponsors. But let's dive into the wellbeing piece. But we'll just hear from our sponsors. So we'll be back in about a minute and a half. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Welcome back, Jeremy. So I would love to explore the mental health aspect of you, now working for yourself, prioritizing, all of those sort of things. So how are you maintaining your balance and prioritizing your mental well-being while you're pursuing your dreams? What things are you doing to make sure that that's being looked after?
I focus a lot on things that I enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds simple, but not everybody gets a chance to do that. And I haven't had the chance, or freedom to be able to do that in the past, a little bit like we talked about before. So, I actually think, am I enjoying this? Is this fun? And I do ask myself those questions. Sometimes, it's necessary and you kind of just persist and you just do stuff. But I do try and just sort of say, look, is this something that I really want to do? And that starts, I think. I've also done some work in actually identifying what it is that stimulates me and motivates me. And so, apart from sort of having fun, so I found now I do a lot more reading than I've done in the past, and that's like a self-development thing. Not just business books. I do read business books, but and coaching books. And so, but it's just because I'm interested in it. It's not really because I'm looking for the next sort of silver bullet in coaching or whatever it is. It's just because I'm actually genuinely interested in it, and so I enjoy that. And then just reflecting on what I've read. I think other than that, I do try and switch off on the weekend. I try not to do things on the weekend, and I do try and finish the day. If I try, I'm not very successful, but I do try and finish the day at 5.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes that's just not a happening thing.
Yeah.
Particularly, I do a lot of networking and what have you, but so that's kind of like what I try and do. And then at least 3 times a week, I've learned I need to do some exercise. So I'll go cycling, and that's what I do. I've only recently got into it. A good motivator I've found is buy an expensive push bike and then leave it somewhere visible, and you just kind of look at it and go, I should get on that,
It's waving at you.
I know. But there's actually a lot of time. I used to swim, and I've heard, other swimmers, you kind of go, oh, how boring is this? You just go up and down and just look at the black line all the way. But it's actually about reflection time, and it's about, improving. You're kind of trying to better your personal best and whatever. But a lot of it's about reflection time, and putting that together. So I think that is important. And then the other thing we do try and do is spend time as a family. Our kids are a little bit older now, but my wife works very hard in a business that she's running, and it's very easy, even if you're working in the same building, I find, not to spend any time with each other. So I think that's important to actually spend time, doing fun stuff as well. So last week we walked around an art gallery 2 weeks ago, which is great. We go to dinner and just do like, I can't say I'm particularly arty, but she is, and it's, so it was great to spend time.
Yeah, nice. And is there anything, because I know you and I have talked about this before from a woo-woo point of view, this is all very new to you. Is there anything like, do you ever do any meditations, or have you ever journaled or anything like that?
No, I don't do meditation sort of formally. I do a lot of reflection. So I know that there's a difference, but I'm sort of, I feel like I'm embarking on a journey that you're already on. So there's a bit of that, but, so it's more, I would say more reflection, but, there's still room for that for me. I don't have a closed mind. I think what I've learned and what I've really enjoyed is actually having an open mind to lots of new things and lots of different things. And, and again, being married to somebody who is in that space, some of the stuff I just look at and go, really, is this going to make a difference? Stuff around the house, burning stuff and whatever. I'm like, whatever. She's always done it. She's always done it, and then keeps this, So like, she's a very smart woman, right? And so there's got to be like, I'm obviously missing something here, right? So I sort of like, I've made a note, so I need to go back to that and learn a bit more about that.
I love that. I think that open-mindedness helps you, from definitely from a mental well-being point of view, but also from a business perspective, because those little side conversations that you have with people, or somebody might make a comment or talk about something, I think you need to have that open-mindedness, because I think it's very difficult when you're working for yourself to be able to be across everything that's happening in business and in the world. And so I think having an open mind and listening and taking on board what people suggest, I think is a great aspect to have.
I
Yeah.
think I think I don't know whether you found this, but I think when I, again, on reflection, when I started my career when I was in sales or whatever, when I was younger, you couldn't tell me anything. I knew everything, right? And then as I've gone on with my career, sometimes you think, well, as people get older, they sort of get set in their ways and they get, they're very difficult to change or what have you. But I don't think I've found that. And I think I've actually been kind of humbled by, I sort of think back and go, oh my gosh, I said that. That was the worst answer. Why did you do that? And so, and when I was, for example, when I was COO, I was COO in various different companies for about 8 years before I got a CEO gig. And I thought, how is this? Anyone can do it, I got this. And sort of sitting on the sideline, on that, on the other side of the fence. And then when I got that job, I was like, whoa, okay, now I get it. And so then I realized how much I thought I knew even then, that I didn't actually know. So now I'm thinking, well, if that was the case, how much, do I think I know now that I really don't know? So actually it's becoming more and more apparent to me that I know less and less. Yeah. So I think you need an open mind to be able to actually, there's just no time, that's not so, you've got to actually really try and pick the good stuff that's going to improve you.
Definitely. And I would suspect it was one of the things that I was a bit like you, like I'd coached and mentored people in my career for over 20 years. But when I actually sort of stepped out into my own business, I did go and get a qualification of coaching, more because of what you had said previously. I needed a bit of structure, because when you're in business, you're kind of coaching, mentoring, but in a more less structured, sort of a more informal kind of way. Whereas actually then when people are paying you for your time to get a certain result, I think that structure is very important. But one of the things that I really loved when I went through that process was more like when I talk to my clients, we don't set goals, we experiment. Because the word goal for me, if you don't reach it, means usually psychologically you feel like you've failed. Whereas if I'm getting my clients to experiment with an idea that they've got, they love it because they go, oh, that didn't work, but I tried this and this was really good.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a question here, but from you learning sort of formally of how to coach people, do you find then that open-mindedness has also come in, that you're really working side by side with the client as opposed to trying to impart your knowledge and tell them what they need?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that, in the coaching sessions that I've observed, and you can go watch videos and, on how to do it and how not to do it and what have you. It's like the biggest turn off when, people, sort of say, well, what do you want to achieve from this session? And they say, I want to achieve A, B, and C. And you go, well, look, I'll tell you what you should really be focusing on. And people just sort of just sit back and go, okay, and so I think you really need to listen and be driven by, the coachee, and it's all about the coachee. It's not about the coach. So, and I'm quite careful, very careful around just say, I might think that I know what the answer is, but the coachee needs to tell me what they think the answer is, because, what if I'm wrong? Right?
Yeah.
And so, and they're the experts in themselves and in their lives. I can't hope to understand them as well as they understand themselves.
Yeah.
So, having said that, if they say, well, look, you've done this before, what would you do? Or then I think, well, that's okay. And then you kind of go, okay, I'm taking the coaching hat off and I'm putting the mentor hat on.
Yeah.
And I'll say, look, I've had a similar experience. This is what I did, and this is what was good about it, and that's what was not so good about it. So I'm still not telling them what to do. But I think you've got to be quite strict, I think, around, telling people what to do. Otherwise, it's just a course, right? You're just going to go, here you go, just here's my video, watch that, and we'll do a quiz at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I love that. It's like click. Okay, click. Did
That's
I
it.
pass? Yay.
Yeah.
You know, one of the interesting things when I did my formal qualification, and it really stuck with me, one thing that one of my mentors in the qualification said to me was, you should never, ever tell your client that you're proud of them.
Right.
And I was like, really? Why? And they said, because it doesn't matter. It's not about how you feel about them. It's about them. And I've actually removed that from, in the sense of, I do tell my clients when I'm really proud of them,
Yeah.
because, you know, when they've achieved something really big in their life, I often say, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of how far you've come.
Yeah.
And we do it from a reflective point of view, but I just thought it was the weirdest advice that I ever got. I thought, so, you know, could you imagine being the blank client going, yeah, you know, I've done all of this. Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
just,
know, that's right. That's right. But the ICF, you know, the International Coaching Federation, do say, you know, in their markers that and in their codes that and guidance that you should be actually encouraging, you know, progress and actually acknowledging,
acknowledge.
you know, the wins and the effort that people that your coachees have made. So.
This is such an odd
Doesn't
thing.
sound like that's aligned, but I think the other thing I have learned is, you know, coaching is very personal,
Mm,
you know, and tailored to the individual, but also, you know, not only the coachee, but the coach, you know,
mm,
gets to dictate and figure out what their style is.
mm.
So, you know, you know, I'm trying to stay aligned with the ICF, and that's, you know, that's what I like to do. But within that, there's still plenty of latitude to be able to inject your personal style into that resonates with the people that you're coaching, I think.
Yeah, because not everybody, you know, you could be coaching 5 people on the same thing, but each person needs something a little bit different
Yeah.
in that. Yeah, yeah,
And some people feel like really uncomfortable if you go, oh, you know, you did such a good job, and people are like, you know, I don't
yeah.
like it, right? And other people are like, yeah, that's good, keep it coming, I love it, you know, just pump my tires up a bit more.
Mm.
So it's not everybody's bag. So I think again, it depends on how you know your coachee is wired, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So if you were sitting across from someone and they were asking your advice about starting to explore their true purpose and passion, what advice would you give them? What are maybe 2 things that you would share with them?
I think, well, I mean, I can tell you what I did, and that would be really sit down and you know, deliberately reflect on what you find enjoying and stimulating. You know,
Yeah.
what gives you, you know, intrinsic reward. So not just money. You know, what's something where you actually do it and think, wow, that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So for me, an example of that was, and you must have been in this situation, you know, when you coach someone and they're talking and they might talk for 10 minutes or what have you, and then they just go, and you know, and you just go, oh, something happened there, the light bulb went on, and they go, I got it, yeah, and then this, and then that, I'm going to do this, and then you know, and they've made a connection in their head, you know, they're about to tell you about it, and you just go, that is just priceless.
Yeah.
That, yeah, that part. And so, you know, I actually kind of do it for that. Not to say everyone has to have that epiphany in every session,
Yeah.
but it's actually helping people, you know, really figure out what's important to them.
Mm.
And so for me, that was important to me, you know, so I sort of figured
Yeah.
that out.
Yeah.
So I would say figure out, but and then the other thing would be deliberate. So,
Mm.
so I'm very much, it's personally around having a go, you know, and
Mm.
backing yourself and you know, doing things on purpose.
Mm.
And so the way I kind of justify that is if I make a decision or I do something that wasn't right, like you know, I thought, oh, let's buy this, and it turned out to be a dud, or let's do, you know, whatever.
Mm.
I look back on that and then just say, okay, well, look, that was not the right thing to buy, or you know, in this context. But having said that, with the information that I had at the time,
Mm.
that was the best decision to make. And actually, if you'd asked me today to make that decision, I'd still make the same decision because that's the only information I had, you know.
Yeah.
So you just don't beat yourself up about it. You
Yeah.
just, you know, so I don't know whether that fits into 2.
Yeah.
But yes,
I think that that's really good. Like not being so hard on yourself too. You know, it brings
yeah,
back to that what we talked about before, having that little bit of flexibility of, okay, well, I tried this, but actually that didn't work. That's okay. You know,
yeah, and I
what
think
else
it's
can I try?
for sure, and I think it's what you kind of alluded to before. Like we're kind of experimenting,
Yeah,
and if you kind of recognize it for that and say, okay, well, look, I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work, okay,
yeah.
so you sort of hope for the best, plan for the worst, and just keep rolling.
Yeah, yeah. I think the other thing for me that I see with people who have just started out as well is the whole networking, getting out there, joining groups, doing lots of online courses and doing all of that, but then they're actually not actually working on the business itself.
Yeah,
So they kind of get shiny thinged in the sense of, well, I've got to go out there and I've got to promote myself and I've got to do all these courses, but then it's like, but what are you actually doing? Like, have you sent a newsletter? Have you started to build a newsletter list? Have you
yeah,
done some social media posts? Have you done this? And or have you contacted some people and they're like, no. And it's like, okay, well, you've got to, I feel like there's also that balance of working on the business, in the business,
yeah.
and then out of the business as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love the networking thing. I think, culturally, networking in Australia is, different to networking in America, whereas I
Yeah.
think the Americans kind of get on with it and
Hmm.
do it more quickly
Mm.
than the Australians. So they're a little bit more, get to the point. But
Yes.
I go to quite a lot of networking events and I see, and everyone's all like, they sort of hate it, and you just kind of go, look, everyone everyone here is like that, right? So, it's like if you feel nervous and bad, well, or whatever, or a little bit, lacking in confidence, well, there's like 10 other people in the room who are the same, you know. So I think,
Yeah.
just to sort of bear that in mind, I
Yeah.
think is also, but I think the point you make, yeah, for sure, figuring out whether to work in the business or on the business and getting that balance right. Because at some point you do need to work in the business as well, right? And you
Yeah,
actually need to get stuff
absolutely.
done.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Um, Amazing. I love this. There's so many. I knew that there'd be lots of golden gems of of advice coming from you through this conversation. So I really, really do love it. So surprisingly, we do only have a few minutes left.
Yeah,
And so I told you this time does go quickly. Um,
flies.
it does. It really flies. So I'll ask you the same question that I ask all of my guests before we finish our conversation. So, what is one lesson or truth that you've learned on your journey that you wish you had known earlier?
Well, there's many, so
Yeah,
I'll choose one and see how we're going for time. But my kind of most important one actually has been don't sweat the small stuff. So, I think um, I I was a bit of a perfectionist
mm,
before, where I just had to get everything exactly right before building enough confidence to take that step.
yeah,
And it's, you kind of go, so now I'm a bit of an 80-20 kind of
yeah,
merchant. And I don't mean I'm sort of half doing stuff. I know that's 50-50, but there comes a balance where you need to actually start to build some momentum.
yeah,
And I think if you surround yourself with people who are supporters, and you show some vulnerability and say, okay, hey, I'm trying this, right? But people will go with you,
mm,
and they come along with the journey. And so I think if you've got that authenticity and you've got a can do, get it done kind of attitude,
mm,
that helps. And I think if I'd had that a little bit earlier in my career, I probably would have made more progress, noting that I'm actually now not measuring progress by money and titles. I'm talking about progress in terms of personal development, self development, capability,
yeah.
and well-being.
Mm, mm. And
Mm.
I love that. That is really perfect to finish this conversation in that because I think, again, it comes back to working in and on the business in the sense of if you're doing a website or you're doing some social media, don't overthink it
Mm.
because the social media stats now they say that you've got less than 2 seconds to grab someone's attention. So if you spend hours agonizing over what you're going to put on social media, like at the end of the day, I'm really sorry, but no one cares. You know what I mean? Because if you've got less than 2 seconds, just put stuff out there. If you're there regularly enough,
Yeah.
and people are going to start watching your stuff. But really don't overthink it and sweat that small stuff, because it will actually block you and stop you from moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's exactly right, and there's no reason for it. There's no need for it, because people get behind you, and you know, and they do support you, which is, I
Yeah.
think that's the wonderful thing about the human race is you know, that, you know, they do get behind you, which is great.
Absolutely. And again, that's where it comes back to that, picking the right people in your inner circle as well,
Yeah,
because they're going to challenge you when you need the challenge, but they're also going to be there supporting you as well. And not having a go at you if you haven't taken their advice, but still supporting you when you didn't take their advice and it didn't work. And they're not going to tell you, I told you so. They're just going to support you.
yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, I thought I was going to get. I did a couple of podcasts, and I thought I was going to get heckled, you know, in the comments or whatever. But what I didn't realize is actually I was interviewing people who I know well, and they were heckling me on the podcast. I'm like, hey, you're the guest. You're not supposed to be having a go at me. So yeah, you know,
Yeah.
you never can pick it. But it was. It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. It's a really nice way to end the conversation. Um, so thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and
My
experience.
pleasure.
It's people like you who inspire others to take the leap and follow their true north. So I really appreciate you being really open and candid about, what you've struggled with and what has challenged you. So thank you for that. I'd also like to thank all of our amazing and dedicated audience, our supporters, our sponsors in particular, and I hope that you all have an amazing rest of the week, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. And thank you again, Jeremy.
Great to talk to you. Thanks for having me on. Really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Cheers.